Hello, everybody. Welcome to show number 809. We're live as usual from San Francisco, from the Beach Street Yacht Club, Studio B, with my co-host and landlady and Commodore of the Beach Street Yacht Club, Julia Veda-Kent. Was that, you're just going to wave or you're going to say something? How can I check your mic level if you don't say something?
Okay. Well, it's nice to be here today.
Well, how nice of you to say that. It's nice to have you here. I'm your host, Tom Eman. We've got Britton Ward standing quietly and patiently by. He's our guest today, and he is not in Annapolis, but he's in Hudson, Wisconsin, visiting his parents, his beloved parents. What a great son you are, Britt, to be there with your parents. We'll get back to you in a sec, as this show 809 is now well and truly underway for Tuesday, the 18th of February. Thank you for joining us, everybody, and a belated happy Valentine's Day, Julia.
Thank you, and to all.
We talked a little bit about it. We had all those Valentine jokes on Friday, and I took a ration, but they kept coming in over the weekend, people who didn't see the show. So we've got one more here.
Okay.
And this is courtesy of one of our super FOSI, Ed Worley, and he said, all the nice girls, or the meme says, all the nice girls love a sailor.
How could you not?
Is that true?
Oh, of course it's true.
And you used to say, why date a sailor when you could date the Commodore?
That's right. No, the weekend sailor.
Weekends. Why date a weekend sailor
when you can date a Commodore?
A Commodore. Belated happy Valentine's Day, everybody. Nice to have you here with us. And we've got Britton Ward standing by live, and we're going to do a feature on another FOSI, on Harry Price, who's just doing great things down under in the skiff, the 18-foot skiff league. We'll get to him also with a video. He's joining us by video today. Here's a video.
For Tom Slingsby to part his way through the fleet here. Can he dodge his way in here? The French are coming in hot, but Slingsby's got a big gap. He lines it up. He winds it up. We're watching for the start line to turn white. How's your timing, Tom Slingsby? Oh, he's on the money again. What a start from the Australians. A bullet out of the gun.
Parting the Red Sea like a bullet out of the gun, and I'm not going to play it again, but if you didn't notice, he's so excited, and then he doesn't realize that he grabs his crotch like he's tell me who, Justin Bieber, or the late great, who was the black artist? Come on, I'm going to have to go to Brit to that.
I don't know.
Come on, Julia.
I don't know. I never watched that.
The Family of Five.
Oh.
Michael Jackson. He grabs his crotch. He's so excited he grabs his crotch. I can't take it anymore. I mean, I really have a hard time listening to SailGP's commentary. And this is after I said nice things about it. We talked about it on Friday's show. This video was sent in by one of our super FOSI who said, oh, barf, this guy, meaning Stevie Morrison, needs to go. And Rick Bannerow in Connecticut sent that in, and I think I certainly agree. After I know the comment I made, Julia, was about the Super Bowl and how nice and professional the two guys were, whatever his name is, and Tom Brady, who's a Michigan man, and how professional and calm and nice. They raise their voices. Yeah, when somebody throws a long pass and they score a touchdown, yeah, okay, let's get excited. But this is not bloody soccer or Formula One. This is yacht racing, like golf and tennis. Oh, there he goes, and he gets all excited. And excuse me, Britt, you don't do that, do you?
No.
Thank you. We'll get back to Britt in a second. He's a man of few words, like Harry Price. No, he's absolutely, they both are. Barf, this guy needs to go. But in any event, speaking of Friday, we had a great show on Friday. Curses Foiled again was the theme, and I want to thank John Emmett and the rest of that panel for coming on. It generated a lot of comments over the weekend, Julia. You probably know that. You saw those comments, but thanks to John, Hattie, Marina, Marcus, Luca, and Helena, who were our super panel, they were terrific.
And they were a super panel.
And they were indeed. And they got a lot of comments about, well, that's not our, some people say that's not our sport. Some people say it is our sport, but don't let it overrun club sailing. But I think we'll ask Britt later in the show about foiling and see what he thinks, because he's, I'm sure, got a view on all of this too, having just designed American Magic's hull and more, being on the design team for that foiling AC-75 in Barcelona. But thanks again to that gang. Thanks again, especially to John Emmett for putting the show together, whose Coaching Corner comes to us again today from Australia. And here is his video.
Hi, Tom, Julia, and all the FOSI. So for those people watching live, if you haven't done so already, please do share. It makes such a difference to have the whole audience join us for the live show. And that, for me, the live comments is what I really look forward to. And featuring on the last show, the foiling panel, it was so much fun. And that must be one of the fastest hours of my life. It was a shame we couldn't get Ellie Eldridge on. I really hope she'll join us for another time, because her pathway is exactly what you would expect, starting with ABs, which is much like a cadet, going through 420s, 29ers, FXs. It's just she carried on going. She got faster and faster. So I guess the fastest so far is probably the Sail GP. But the foiling, I mean, it really gets that sort of thrill-seeking element for some people. And I don't think you can really limit people's journeys. And I think the key message for me, because I'm not a foiler, but I can just see the value from sitting around after sailing, the excitement on the young people's faces, it's hard to quantify. And foiling is something that might not be for everybody, but anyone can do it. So the first thing I would say to people is, if you've never foiled before, give it a go. I had one go. It was very wet, but it was an awful lot of fun. And I don't think sailing clubs can be too open. I just love to go walking around the sailing clubs and you pull the signs down that say private members only and replace that with new members welcome. And I think as a sport, we're trying to grow the pie, grow the cake to make sailing more accessible, but we should really welcome all types of sports. Even if that isn't our personal part of the sport, we should welcome everybody into the sailing family. And just reading through some of the comments, I see no reason why somebody who sails a foiling boat is less likely to do their duty than somebody who sails a non-foiling boat. In fact, I just see a huge amount of crossover. So you have a Wednesday evening race, typically 5, 6, 7 knots, and people are sailing boats like Scorpions, etc. Traditional boats, traditional spinnakers work very well in light winds. And then on the Sunday, where we're sailing around midday, people are quite happily foiling all around. And, you know, the handicap system, it's never perfect. It's just about enjoying time on the water. But I would say to people, if you're not a fan of foiling, that's absolutely fine. But please don't make it any harder for us to promote our sport. And it's the same with the parasailing. I think that is a sport that really needs to be led by parasailers, and then I'm very happy to follow along behind and support as much as I can. And I think there'll be some exciting things happening next month, but I don't want to give it the commentator's curse, which is when you say, oh, it looks like somebody's winning, and then they immediately pitch pole / catapult. But yeah, the live shows have been absolutely fantastic, and Tom and Julia are amazing, all the hard work they do. And it's time, wherever you are, to try and get more sailing in 2025. I've said what my New Year's resolution was, this inclusivity. So sail fast, sail safe, and have lots and lots of fun. See you on the show.
Thank you, John Emmett. John Emmett's Coaching Corner, as usual, Julia. Interesting topics, interesting thoughts from Coach Emmett. John Emmett, get to the front of the fleet. Why don't we bring Britton Ward in here before we talk about what are we celebrating today, Julia? Go right to Britt and see what what do you think, Britt, of this foiling phenomenon?
Well, I mean, there was a time when a boat if you didn't have a full keel on a boat, it wasn't a real boat, right? It was the same thing with multi-hulls, and it's the same thing with foiling boats. So, you know, I'm with John here. We need to be the biggest tent we can be. I mean, fundamentally, it's about enjoyment and, you know, extracting the most efficiency out of the air and the water and the boat to go as fast as you can. And that doesn't change if you're in the air or not. So, you know, I'm excited to see foiling develop. We've got a fleet of wasps in our club that's just coming up, and it's really great to see that there's some pathways and seeing it drawing some young people. You know, I think I was until I'd done this last 4 years in with American Magic. You know, I was probably a little more. I wasn't sure. Maybe it was a different sport in its own right, but no, it's definitely part of sailing, and
So you agree it's not a different sport? It should be in the Olympics. We should be. Where do you draw the line? At what point are the boats no longer sailboats? If they're RC boats and we're sitting someplace on shore to run the America's Cup boats,
Well,
or
I
if
mean,
they're completely out of the water, is there a line that we draw somewhere?
I don't know why we have to draw a line. It just seems to be minimizing people's, trying to exclude people for no apparent reason. I mean, I think, and we're experiencing this, right? Rules and how we construct regattas and how these things are built may differ for each type of class and each type of boat to provide the best competition. But I don't see a reason to isolate one part of it from the other.
When you said your club, are you talking about Annapolis Yacht Club or Severn Sailing Association?
Severn Sailing Association,
which is the big dinghy club, really, in Annapolis, right?
Yeah.
Julie, how are your views? Are you still happy with foiling as part of our sport and not separating it off into another sport?
I am. I think there are times when you could argue the other way, but I think it is an expansion.
But let me ask you both one more time, and then we'll go to maybe some comments. But do you think that foilers, people who learn, well, let me ask you this. Most of the people who are going foiling are already sailors, right? They're not going in to learn sailing via the foiling route. Is that fair to say?
I think that's probably fair, but that may be changing. I don't know.
Will people who are foilers later in life go back to traditional sailing?
I think they will. And I think that, whether that's for social reasons or other reasons, health reasons, any reasons, the beauty of sailing is the sport for your entire life.
For mental health reasons, because you just can't.
Mental health reasons.
You can't stand doing it anymore.
No?
Okay, well, that's our foiling. Let me see if there's any pressing comments here. Graham Sweeney is wish I was middle-aged. Yeah, there's a lot of comments on here. He's with Britt. Gordon Smith totally agrees with you. Gordon in Denmark, of course. Make the cake bigger, Gordon is saying. Everybody's thanking John Emmett and the rest of that panel. Proof is in the pudding, John. Proof of the pudding is in the eating, is what Shakespeare said. Looking at it from a Weymouth, meaning their National Sailing Center perspective.
Andrew Dolly DeVola.
What's he saying?
Like it or not, foiling is the way we will attract new generation. Embrace it or fade away.
Most people seem to be on that view. So let's carry on and talk about what are we celebrating today, Julia?
Looks like wine to me.
You think?
Yeah.
National Drink Wine Day. There is such a thing here in the USA. Raise your glass to a delicious beverage that pairs well with a romantic dinner or a fun night out with friends. Britt, I can remember you and I and your wife, Jay, having some wine at a dinner once or twice in Annapolis. Is that true?
It's true. I think we did it in San Francisco, too.
I think we did it in San Francisco. I think we did it in Auckland.
And probably Valencia.
Valencia,
too. So,
during various America's Cups. So we have to sell. Now, I stopped drinking on my 70th birthday. I know you can't believe it. You're flabbergasted, but that's news, real news. Yeah, so a year and change ago, I did. But nonetheless, I still have a sip or two from time to time. But National Drink Wine Day, raise your glass to a delicious beverage. Yes, indeed. Ernest Hemingway apparently said, quote, wine is one of the most civilized things in the world, one of the most natural things in the world that has been brought to the greatest perfection, and it offers a greater range of enjoyment and appreciation than possibly any other purely sensory thing. Julia, Britt, do you agree with Mr. Hemingway?
No.
No. Britt?
There may be some other things up there.
Okay, I agree. The history of wine itself, he must not have much of a sex life, right?
Yeah.
Huh?
Yeah. Gotta believe
he
that.
Must not. The history of wine itself can be dated back over 8,000 years to winemakers in the Eurasian region that is now Georgia. Georgia. I don't think it's that Georgia in the States.
I don't think it's that one. No.
The alcoholic beverage has played a major part in society ever since and has been drunk in all four corners of the globe. Okay, we all know this. Iranians, who would have known? Italians and Europeans in the Balkans all have rich histories of wine. The Balkans of wine production that date back to ancient times, while China created very similar alcoholic beverages as early as 7,000 BC. and wine has consequently been celebrated by fans for centuries. You all know this, commonly enjoyed as part of a meal or to enhance social events. In fact, the average adult consumes. Now, I did not know this. Britt, Julia,
Yes.
the average adult, at least here in the States, consumes 45 gallons and change of the stuff every year, which works out to 20 miles per gallon, given that average person walks 900 miles per year. Now, is that not the most croutonic stat we've ever had on this show?
Yes.
That's
Huh?
right up there.
That
And I
is-
know I'm going to use that again.
It works out to 45 miles per gallon.
Yeah.
Okay, well, finally a meme to wrap that croutonic segment up. That's what I do. I sail, I drink, and I know things.
Right.
That meme came from Ed Worley, and I thought that was a nice summary to what we are celebrating today, Julia. And of course, we're also celebrating our FOSI, far and wide, those that have been on the show regularly, and those who watch the show regularly, and those who contribute via Patreon. Become patrons via patreon.com/join/sailing illustrated, and we deeply appreciate your support. A couple of program notes coming up here. We have coming on Friday Coach John Rogers, who's the head coach at San Diego Yacht Club, and we are going to explore the booming, it's growing like topsy, the DF95 world, the RC yachts, radio-controlled yachts, the most popular one design class. Britt, are you doing any RC sailing? Are you doing any DF95ing?
Not right now, I'm not. But we'll see.
What's
Don't know
the
about
seriously? What's the scene in Annapolis?
Oh, it used to be quite common racing them outside the chart house through the windows in the winter, but I haven't. I'm still finding my feet after getting back from Spain, so I'll have to go see if it's happening here.
Well, we'll know more after Friday when we have John Rogers coming on, and I know Bob Johnstone's been talking up DF95s. You know Bob, of course. Britt and Julia, you know Bob, or at least know of him, and he's become a mad keen, and he's got to be 80-something now, mad keen. This is Bob Johnstone of J-Boats, along with his brother Rod Johnstone, who designed and marketed all those J-Boats until their kids took over. Fantastic stuff. We'll have John Rogers on to talk some more about that on Friday, and then the following Friday, one of Julia's favorite people
Yes.
on the show, Mr. Dr. Andrew McIrvin, will be with us to update us on offshore racing. In fact, today, the RORC. What's that regatta called today, Britt, down in the Caribbean, down in, where is it, in Aruba or Curacao?
They're in Antigua right now.
Antigua?
And then, Antigua's on right now, and St. Bart's coming up.
Yeah, so are you going down for any of that?
Not this year, but
Too bad.
Too bad.
it is, because it's minus 10 outside where I am right now. So, yeah, I'd like to be there.
Minus that, and that's really cold because that's minus 10 Fahrenheit, not just minus 10 Celsius.
Right.
That wimpy temperature scale. Mr. Doctor Andrew McIrvin will be with us next Friday, the 28th. And by the way, coming
yes.
sooner than later, you know who that is, Julia?
Yes.
One
Pedro.
of the few FOSI who's been here in Studio B.
Right.
Pedro Foiling Sailor, Peter Stevenson, from Australia. He's in Sydney. He's got a new project, and he will reveal that soon on this show. And I can tell you it is a cool project. You're going to like it a lot. Britt, you're going to like it a lot too, because it involves, I'm going to give a bit of a hint here, it involves yachts of which all three of us are very fond. And you know what that is, Julia?
Got to be 12s.
I got to be 12s. That is correct. So enough of all that, but I've got one more. I have one more promo, Julia.
Uh-oh.
Coming up, one of Australia's most beloved sailors, commentators, and so on. Do you know who that is, either of you?
No.
We talk about him on the show. He's also often on here commentating. Britt, you've been out of Australia a long time, living in this. You're more American than you are, I think, than you are Australian at this point. That is Andrew Dolly Davola. Andrew Davola.
Is that what he looks like?
That's what he looks like. And that's his nickname, Dolly. And he is wildly popular as a windsurfer at a fairly advanced age who's had some health challenges. He's coming on the 4th of March to preview the JJ, because I learned last night that, in fact, he is the co-commentator, along with Peter Shipway and some of the others, on all of the live television, on the YouTube live streams that they will carry on YouTube of the J.J. Giltonen, which is, it's the intergalactic championship of the 18-footers.
Oh.
Right, Britt?
It is, absolutely.
And a cool event. And Britt said in the tech check he could stay with us while we carry on and talk about Harry Price and the phenomenal season he and his crew are having in the 18-footers, Ideens and the skiffs. This is some more of Dali Devola, who, by the way, just finished third in the slalom in their nationals in Australia in the windsurfing. Now, this guy, as I said, look, he's come back to shore. He's barely able to stand up, but he did it amazingly. In the highlights, they just had it in last month in January. The Vycobi, I don't know, is that how you pronounce that, Britt? Do you know the word?
Yeah, Vycobi.
Vycobi, a company that I guess makes a lot of sailing gear.
Yeah.
Life jackets and so on, PFDs. It's not the marathon winner or the guy with the picket fence scoreline. It was the moment that Andrew Dali Devola came ashore after securing third place in the slalom in his division, said Sail World, several different articles. He did it the hard way, fighting through the double elimination rounds to the final. He was racing fresh guys into the last race when Dali had already sailed multiple rounds coming from behind. If you know anything about Dali, you know he is a living legend of the Australian sailing community. And despite his health limitations, Dali loves his racing. And today, this was last month, managed the fantastic third place in slalom.
That's incredible.
So I wanted to bring, I promised that I'd cover that sooner or later because we talk about Dali on here a lot. But on March 4th, he's coming on to preview the JJ because he will DBA. He'll be doing business as one of those commentators when Harry Price and the rest of the gang get going in the JJ next month. So let's snap ahead now to Britton Ward, whom I've known, gosh, Britt, how long do we go back? 20, 25?
25 to plus, maybe. Yeah.
How many campaign? What was your first AC campaign that we did together? Was it 03?
Oh, it was 03, yeah.
So we did 03, 07, 010. You didn't do 10, right?
I didn't do 10.
10?
I didn't do 10. No.
13?
No.
And then you've been with American Magic for the last two campaigns, correct?
Yes. Well, just the last one.
The last one. So you didn't do their earlier campaign. You just did the one in Barcelona. Brett is now president of Fart Yacht Design, the chief naval architect there, and was instrumental in helping me come up with the Super 12 concept, which we still have, don't we, Britt? Still on the shelf.
It's still there on the shelf. Yeah.
If somebody wanted to fund that, we wouldn't be shy about building a couple of those and having an international match race tournament, Julia. Right,
absolutely.
Right here in San Francisco. You could pay for the whole thing, Julia.
Sure, I could.
After your visit from your stockbroker last week.
Yeah, it lasted about 10 minutes.
I said Julia would be farting through silk. That's not my expression. That's my dad's expression. And it turns out, Britt, she is. She's had a great year in the stock market. So maybe we can get her to build us a Super 12.
Super 12. There we go.
Yeah, nothing to it. Pocket change.
Britt, tell us about this upcoming event, the 25th Chesapeake Sailing Yacht Symposium. This is the biggest deal, I suppose, in the sport. It's being held again at the Naval Academy. And I understand you and your wife, Jay, are co-hosting it. Is that right?
That's correct. And it's probably the fifth one we've co-hosted. Basically, I mean, my history goes back when I was a student at Webb. I attended one of these. I don't even remember which, probably in 1993 or 4. And it's just become, it's one of the very few venues where sort of all the academics and the details of the science and design and sailing can be presented amongst people. So it's been an international conference, and it's the fifth. The first one was in 1974, so last year was 50 years, and we're trying to keep it going. So we're really excited by this sort of milestone conference we've got coming up on March 14th, 15th. We have 18 papers, which is to be presented, which is probably a record, and they sort of cover everything from foiling to wind-assisted shipping to weather routing and scoring, and a few good things on design processes. And it's going to be an exciting time. So we'll have a little party on the Friday night, and Gary Jobson's going to come in and give a little historical view on what we've achieved. I was just looking through the papers, and I think there was a foiling paper in the first conference in 1974 about foiling boat control. Olin Stevens presented, I think, papers in the first 3 or 4 conferences. And so, I mean, basically every big name you know in the yacht design world has presented a paper at CSYS. And like I said, we're really proud to keep it going. And I hope people will join us there in Annapolis. And if they can't, they can still register and get access to all the presentations and the papers after it's over.
What do you think will be the new topic? Is there something that's nouveau, that's interesting, new, or are you just going to go? Because a lot of these, you go back and focus on the America's Cup, right?
Yeah, and I would say we have sort of 1 or 2 papers that are quite heavily influenced in the America's Cup or represented by America's Cup teams, or sort of adjacent research. Often it's difficult to get teams and design companies like my own to take the time to share their knowledge or try to put it out in a way that can build it. And I'm not sure I want to keep promoting that and make sure it happens. I think it's really important that the insights are shared, and I think there's ways to share that information without giving away your trade secrets. So there's a lot of it. A lot of the work on foiling is going to be quite interesting. I think there's a huge new push on pushing towards zero emissions shipping, and so wind assisted propulsion of shipping. And so there's a lot of application of some of the stuff we've been doing in yacht design for years, and how does it apply to big cargo ships and things. And so there's a lot of interest in that, and that's quite exciting too.
Your wife plays a big role in this and has for several years, and she's even smarter than Julia, is what I hear. I mean, I know her. We've had dinner a few times.
That's easy.
She's got, what, a double PhD?
Just one PhD.
One PhD. She went to Webb. You met her at Webb. Then she went off to MIT and got a PhD there, and then another one at where? University of Maryland?
No, we both got masters at MIT, and then she went and got a PhD at Maryland in helicopter aerodynamics.
Helicopter aerodynamics. Is she still a professor of naval architecture at the Naval Academy there in Annapolis?
Yeah, absolutely. Yep, she's teaching there.
A great job.
It is. Hey, while we've got you, can I add? May I ask you? Can I ask you about that horrific collision over the Potomac, just down the street from you folks in Annapolis, but the thing in D.C. when the helicopter crashed into the plane? You must know have some insight or scoop into all that. What do you think really happened?
I felt a lot like I happened to be watching TV as it happened, and it was sort of in the second, and just saying, well, we've all flown in and out of National all the time, and so I mean, my first jump was that that plane was on approach. It was on a it's a very clear landing to get down there, and so I was believing that helicopter was either out of position or didn't know where it was or didn't see something. But it's really congested airspace down there, and I think the NTSB's reporting things about altimeter readings in the helicopter and maybe garbled messages and communications. And as with any of these disasters, it's probably a cascade of a few small things, and that's what happens, and they build up.
Well, the fact that the 200 feet, apparently they were a couple hundred feet high. They're supposed to be at 200 feet is what I see and read, and maybe they were at 350 or 400. As the other, sounds like the plane was coming in on the proper course, at the proper altitude and so on. But how do helicopters, and we should ask your wife maybe, but I'm sure you know as well. There's the old-fashioned way of calling the tower, and the tower tells you what to set your altimeter. They tell you what they call it altimeter, but it's really the air pressure at the field. But isn't there a radar altimeter on all these kinds of modern planes as well?
Yeah, there is, and I mean, from what I've heard in some of the NTSB updates, there is a discrepancy between the radar altimeter and the one they were reading. So there's something to be understood there, and who knows what the cause of that is, and then combine that with part of the air traffic control message maybe getting blanked out by a mic press, and that's all it took,
Oh dear.
So,
Yeah.
Oh dear. Well, hopefully that doesn't happen again anytime soon. And thanks for that. Thanks for that insight. Shall we talk about the America's Cup for a second?
Sure.
That is my favorite cup logo, cup image, really. And it works well for whether the cup is the sun is setting on the cup or rising, doesn't it, Julia?
Yes.
Britt?
Yeah.
Britt, in a nutshell, is the cup in trouble? Have we gotten too expensive? Is the sun setting or rising on the America's Cup, or maybe not doing anything?
Well, I mean, I think we've said it's been setting. I don't think you can ever be sure if it's setting or rising. You know, I mean, many of us would have said that the gift challenge was the shot in the foot and the cup was going to die, but it has, can bounce back from that into something even bigger. So it's I've kind of given up trying to prognosticate. We'll see where it goes. But
there is something magical, though. I mean, the '88 deed of gift match, for a whole lot of reasons, was not very interesting. But the 2010 deed of gift match, I'll say it again. I said it on the show the other day. We were commemorating the second race, which happened on Valentine's Day 2010. So we had that on Friday's show, right? Julia's This Day in History. But Britt, two disparate boats, one catamaran, one trimaran, rushed around design teams, one built up in the Alps and flown in by helicopter. Speaking of helicopters, the other one built in California and San Diego, and then shipped over there, and an astonishingly close match caused by, thanks to the deed of gift, which is this now 170-year-old document, not 51, it was 1857. Astonishing. And if we just go back to the deed of gift, would the sport, do you think, be well served by that?
Well, I think. Would it be well served? I mean, there's some beauty in the purity of it, right? I mean, if you go all the way back, you'll sail there on your own bottom, which we didn't do. So you always have this.
No, that stuff's gone. The own bottom thing, the modifications. But if you go back to the deed of gift, the
90 on the waterline.
Yeah, the default
three
provisions.
Races.
Yep.
These are the races. This is it. I mean, there's something really very pure about it, but the constraints of it are, again, it's time and resource. So, and it's really, if you're going to keep it as a pure match race between two, there's a lot of venues you can do that in. If you want more than two teams, there's not too many places that can host a fleet of 90-foot boats designed to a rule. So, I'll
ask you another question, and you don't have to answer anything, but I just, because you're so you've been so involved and ensconced for so long, and you know so much about the cup and yacht design and so on. Should we go to a box rule? Tell me what, 80, 85, like a big TP52?
I mean, I was really excited back, before the 2010 when we were looking at the AC90, and that felt like a chance to sort of breathe new life into a box rule that was sort of pushing the limits of more conventional sailing boats, we'll say. And I think that would have had quite a really exciting take up and caused quite a big leap in technology at the time. But I think it's left the building now. I don't think you can put this genie back in the bottle.
Meaning non-foiling.
Non-foiling. I don't see it happening. And like I said, to see the AC75s on TV is one thing, but to witness it with your own eyes and even go on board one as it's taking off out of the water is an amazing thing to experience. And a lot of my family who nowhere near as involved following the cup and other things, they became the most hardcore fans there are after they saw one race in Barcelona. I mean, family text chats going right and left. What happened? Who broke? Even before I knew sometimes what had happened on the race course. So,
a lot of people have said exactly that. It's, I'm a lifelong hockey player, so maybe this analogy is a bit of a stretch, but it's a bit like watching, and I did 31 watch parties. We went on every day from the start of the LVC or even the preliminary regatta right through the match. And I'd get my sorry butt out of bed at 3:30 and be live at 5. And we had lots of people on all over the world watching. But on TV, it's not a lot of fun. So many people, Britt, have said just what you said a moment ago, is that watching it in person was spectacular. And I'm wondering if it's a bit like a hockey game, which is not such a great sport on TV, and it's much better in person. even better if you're on the ice, like the Americans and the Canadians the other night.
Yeah, I think perhaps just witnessing it, even a few races in real life, it lets you put it in scale. So even when you're watching the TV, subsequently, you have a better idea of, what an 80 knot closing speed is and what these guys are trying to achieve.
Are the courses wrong?
I think. I mean, one of the complicated things perhaps about these, we're sailing on a constrained course, and it has a really big influence on the design of the boats, which is fascinating in its own right, because it's not just steady state VNG sailing. Acceleration is everything, maneuvers are everything, and how you sail that tactically is quite interesting. I think the problem and the beauty of the old ICC or 12 meters was, when you turned that top, and you were behind, you could cover that guy and get into some tactical situations, and those are not really there. So are there ways to alter the course or change the rules to perhaps, build in a bit of a yo-yo or a bit of a ability to come back? I think it would be, I don't know what those are. I've spent some time trying to think it out, but I think there's some things that can probably be adjusted that would improve the racing, or at least give the one behind a chance to come back. So,
well, that's the problem with apparent wind sailing, right?
It is.
You're going to have the wind. You're going that fast, and the wind's always going to be in front of you, and nobody's going to be able to blank. But then sailing, as we saw in the pre-starts, through the wing wash.
Yeah, exactly. So there's a whole nother level of tactics and things happening in these races that we need to try to understand and to appreciate what those guys on board are actually doing and sailing around that. And I think that, to me, to convince the amount of choreography that happens at every mark rounding, and the fact that like 99.999% they do it successfully and beautifully is just astounding. I mean, the amount of things that have to happen every time for that to work is really remarkable, and that it happens so quickly, it's really hard to convey that on the TV, and I'm not sure how you convey it to the public, but there's some really interesting parts.
That's got to be true.
Yeah, I think you're right, Julia. Britt, do you think that we should replace the cyclors with batteries and just cut to the quick and cut the crew down to 4, or get rid of cycling, or is it here to stay as well?
I mean, I think the power limitation it's a really complicated thing to design to. I think it's a really interesting constraint to have on the sailing. So I think there's some value in it, and I do think having at least part of the boat being manually powered is perhaps a bit of that tie back that everyone can appreciate. You're pulling on a sheet or you're grinding that winch, and that's a real part of sailing. And I think there has to be some physicality in there at some point. At the same time, when we're down to four sailors and 4 cyclors, just the opportunities for sailors on the boat, there's just not many, right? Yeah. And so I think I'd like to see perhaps there's some hybrid where some of the functions are still manually driven, and we still need some cyclors, but maybe we can get some more sailors on there. And some of this is related to the venue we sail in, right? So Barcelona was light air. We needed big foils. We need to make boats lighter. How do we make the boat lighter but stay in the same rule space? What are we left with? We need to cut the crew and use cyclers to generate more power. So,
Mark Holland, Julia, you see these comments on your screen over there. Mark Holland is saying, for most onshore viewers, following and understanding what is happening on the water is very difficult, and most don't know what happened until they watch it on the jumbotrons. Yeah, and then even then, it's sometimes hard to make out. Graham Sweeney Mark's here in the States, Graham's over in Scotland. He's saying the fact that you cannot convey it to the public, but you cover every race with the media makes it croutonic. And again, I think that's the biggest problem is the public. And we understand it as sailors. We appreciate it as sailors.
But it's hard to really understand nuances.
Well, exactly. And, I go back to, it's my mother, my late, great, beloved mother who passed away a year or so ago. And she loved to watch the guys in their shorts and their rugby shirts, your era, the Aussie boys coming up and sailing in Newport, Rhode Island in 12s. And everybody relate. We've had this conversation on the show 100 times. Everybody relates to it. Nobody relates to sailing foilers unless you are the very small elite group of sailors who sail moths or sail GP or whatever. But okay, we're not going to solve this today. Interesting to hear your views, though, Britt. If technology sailing, it's technology sailing, Clayton Embley is saying, not technical sailing. Most people in my club don't even watch the cup races anymore. And we've seen that at St. Francis.
Yes.
We've seen that at Balboa, the two clubs where I hang out most. And Julia, Britt,
Yes.
since we have Clayton Embley commenting, I think it's time to break out the bourbon cream. Have you ever had bourbon cream?
I think I have.
We talked. Well, you've had probably a little bit of that Irish stuff.
Yeah.
Bailey's. Well, we do this during the show when
I have to drink because he's not.
Clayton Embley sends this stuff to us, and it's delicious. I wish I were drinking. And we pour Julia. We pour a pretty good dollop.
Yeah, I
Britt.
get a double dollar.
There's
She
a
gets
double there.
And she becomes even more cheerful as the show. Do that again, Julia. As the show goes on. Okay, let's get seriously now to some of the details of the America's Cup as I put our bottle away behind us. Britt, AC 37 in Barcelona. By the way, do you have any idea where you think AC 38 is going to be?
I have no idea. I mean, I you hear rumor of somewhere in the Middle East or potentially somewhere in Italy, but I don't have any idea. And for those of us that aren't the challenger of record or the defender, we get to sit back and wait and see what they come up with. So,
yeah, the Italian rumor is warming up. I'm hearing that again this morning from a couple different folks. And the Greek rumor, you can forget about Greece. That is a Crotonic. We know that's not going to happen. Italy, perhaps. Italy loves the cup. Italy would no doubt clear the decks to make it all happen in one way or another, not necessarily Patrizio Bertelli. But I'm sorry, money talks, the golden rule, and there's a couple 100 million somethings, reals, the currency in Saudi Arabia, or dollars or euros or something, Brit, on offer in the Middle East. And like most other sports that are headed or have headed in that direction, I suspect our sport is, and our sport already has, but our beloved America's Cup is going to head there probably sooner or later. Let's talk about your boat, your team, your American Magic, which we all thought out of the box was the most beautiful boat, low freeboard. And you had a design team, many of whom I know or have been to war with on America's Cup teams. There you are on only page 2 of, I think, 6. There's something like 50 guys and gals on your design team. And what was your role on the team, Britt?
I was the whole platform lead. So I was working with Pete Melvin and creating that hull shape, basically. And then after that, I was involved in performance analysis on site and design of a lot of the rudders as well. So,
but a lot of new guys too. I'm looking carefully through this list this morning when I was putting the show together. There's Pete Melvin, lower second from the left. Longtime friend who's been involved in the Cup as well for a lot. And then I think it's there's Scotty Ferguson in the upper right corner, whom I know is a good hockey player. I've known him forever and his family. What was Scott's role?
Well, Scott was, essentially our I hazard to use design coordinator because I think his role was much stronger than that. But he was, largely, trying to make sure all of the different design elements were pulling together and making sure we hit our deadlines. And then, once we were there, continuing to support the sailing team as best we can throughout till the very end. So, Scott was, very much the core person this was revolving around. And I think it's real credit to Scott that big team came together so well and worked together so well. And it was a really great mix of, some older hands and some really young guys right out of school and just a real free exchange of ideas that doesn't always happen. Because remember, plenty of people in that room step out of the America's Cup and they're competitors. Merle and Melvin and Fry Out Design, we don't actually work typically in the same zones, but in many ways we are. And so it's really easy to put together a bunch of people in the room that on paper look like this is a gangbuster team. But if you've got you need a free exchange of ideas and a lot of trust. and you don't have a lot of time to do this, So,
But without pointing fingers, would you say that there was any particular weakness in the American Magic, a particular weakness in the American Magic design program, or what?
well, I mean, I think all our design, the nature of the cup is the guy that won it makes the rules, and I think Team New Zealand basically ran a bit roughshod over Ineos in terms of a challenger record.
You
and
think?
I think they basically got everything they wanted in that rule, and so we're under no illusions coming in that we don't have to. Not only do we have to match where they were last time, we have to try to leap ahead of where they're going. And I think it was pretty clear to all of us that Team New Zealand, after New Zealand, had a very clear idea of what they wanted to do the next time, and a lot of the rules were changed to facilitate those changes they had envisioned. And so, that's the game, and we all know that. And I think we swung pretty hard, and I think one of the reasons our boat was so different is that we felt we had to make a leap. And it's easy to say, well, you guys got it all wrong. We didn't win. You didn't get through. But, it's a lot of choices that have to work together into a unique and harmonious whole. And it's all those little pieces that have to come together and get it right. So
what was the most important aspect? And then Jody Shields has asked the question, and we'll come to that in a sec. But what was turned out to be the most important aspect? Was it the low? I mean, let's go look here at a shot of your hull. You guys were famously low windage and a very cool layout. But was it that, or was it foils? Was it power? The ability to apply power from the cyclors? What do you think turned out to be the main deal?
I think in the end, and across us and all the teams, I think a lot of it comes down to your linked logic and control algorithms. So, for this cup, unlike the last one, you couldn't use the boat's state, i.e., its speed or its height or its angles, but you could basically engage logic to control multiple things in a cascade or on demand. And so I think Team New Zealand had a lead there compared to us and compared to everyone. And I think that let them sail the boat, spend more time with their heads out of the boat in a traditional sense, so sailing tactically and able to sail the boat at maximize its potential with a lot less detailed fine-tuning control. So, and I think, in the end, if the boat's very clearly different, but once the boat's in the air, they're part of the sail system, right? And so, even though they're so big, and yes, we drove hard on windage, we thought it was important, but a lot of that was to try to maximize the sales efficiency and the sales ability to generate power. 75 to 80+% of the boat's drag when it's in the air is that foil in the water. And, the difference in area between the entire fleet is probably something on the order of 5% or less across all of them. So there's very small things that you can't see. So, I mean, my big takeaway at the end in the cup was, the boats were quite similar in speed, but Team New Zealand, basically, if every maneuver you don't lose, or you're 20 meters better, made good to the mark the other guy.
They gained on every maneuver,
that's the race. I mean, if we're talking, you're sailing at steady state VMG for, 50, 60% of the race. If you're lucky, the boat's always accelerating. So if your bottom speed's higher than the other guy and you lose this distance, this is where big percentages are made. That's where the gain is entirely. There's almost nothing you can do aerodynamically, hydrodynamically, or otherwise that in a straight line sense can make up for 22 boat lengths in a maneuver loss.
So is that in a word, mechatronics? What's the word?
Mechatronics would be the word, I think.
And is it because they had more time, or because they were smarter, or because they knew the rule inside and out? Or did I want to ask you to opine on whether they cheated, or did things that would not specifically be permitted? I assume the measurement team and everybody was on top of that.
Well, we all have to presume that, I think there were some things in the onboard instrumentation systems that we all had to use in terms of like the course in terms of what information was available to the crew in real time and what was on a delay, and some of that information, some of those rules were not clear, and some of that stuff changed along the way through. And I think one could say Team New Zealand, they knew what it was going to be from the get-go, then they probably had an advantage over everyone else.
How big changing the topic how big a setback was Goody falling down through the hatch?
I think it happened at the worst possible time. And again, it's sort of what I was speaking about before, right? There's so few slots on the boat that what's your training program? Now, we as a team work really hard in investing in our broader sailing team and our younger guys. And so Lucas was about as prepared as he possibly could have been. And I think he sailed exceptionally well and integrated really well. But there's no doubt to my mind, that it was a handicap, that was just an additional, obstacle we had to try to overcome. And
that was tough, because obviously it looked like your performance changed utterly after that accident.
Yeah, and I think there was a lot of other things going on at the time, and we had some condition changes as well, but yeah, clearly you don't want that to happen. It was gut wrenching for Goody. He'd put his heart and soul into this, to go out that way. It was difficult, I think. Well, as a team, I'm still, I've done a few of these now, and I feel the most positive about my experience there and about the team I was surrounded with, and about that team pulling towards the goal, and we didn't get where we wanted to go. And I hope we all have the chance to try it again.
Well, you're young. You're not even 50. You're barely 50, right? So you've got
25 years to go.
Well, or 35 in Julia's case. She's still carrying on here. Jody Shields asks, with the benefit of hindsight, what would you have changed or put less or more effort into?
I think, I've often thought about how we balanced our, effort and, how much resource you have going into foils versus hulls versus mechatronics versus all these things, and versus simulator development. How would you do all those things? And we've had a lot of deep down. I think the biggest problem with the Cup, and this one perhaps in particular, is you start and you've got 2.5 years and you have no idea what anyone else is doing. And by the time you get there, you've got to dance with what you brung. You can't, there's very, and yes, I think we improved dramatically from the start of racing until we were eliminated. And, you could argue improved even more. But if you're improving out there, it's not in hardware changes. It's going to be in software and systems and procedures like that. So that's the area you need to be really ready to go and plan on. But if you're behind in one area and you don't know about it till you start at that prelim regatta, it's a big uphill climb.
Exactly. Well, Claire Harrington, we call her Claire the Brilliant. Maybe you should put her on the design team next time.
We'd love to.
All of us at NYYC are enormously proud of you and your team, Britt. And that's from Vice Commodore Claire Harrington, who is by now a super FOSI. She's been on the show a lot. Do you want to say anything about your hatch covers? Those. What did you call those?
Well, the honest truth is, when the unveiling, and we're all madly trying to model what everyone else has got, and I think we were all stunned that we were the only ones that elected to go recumbent. I still am. I don't think we had a power deficit compared to anyone. And so it's quite interesting that that's the case. And like I said, in the scheme of things, we're not talking about much here, but the game becomes, the knives get sharp when you get in there and you don't know where anyone else stands. And so once you're the one that stands out, you're going to be a target. And we knew we were going to be a target. I didn't know it was going to be the covers. In fact, I thought there was a bunch of other things they were going to try to come at us for it. But the covers was it. And I don't necessarily agree with almost any of the interpretations that were written about them. But, we had planned for it and designed it in from the beginning. And we still had enough leeway that we could have them in there in a fully legal sense when we raced. So, I think it was a success. The trick is to not get distracted by it, right? That's the whole goal.
Well, that's what your rules. you got to have the rules guy who's the, as I used to call it, the sword and the shield. And
Yeah.
you and I and Bruce Farr, and Bruce used to hate me when I was against him. God, he hated me. You remember that first? I wasn't at the meeting, but the first design meeting in, I guess, for 03, and they said, you got, and it was in Annapolis, when your offices are in someplace, conference room, and I wasn't there, but the Oracle / KR team coming out of 2000 were there, and they said, you got Eamon involved in this? That asshole? That's what Bruce Farr said. And you know who my best friend at the end of the 03 campaign was? It was Bruce Farr, right?
Bruce Farr, yeah.
And you and I, and we all hung out in typical America's bullshit, Tom Blackcolor. But you got to have a strong rules effort. You got to have a strong sword and shield. But Britt, I think, having nothing to do with you or American Magic per se, but you got to have a strong challenger record who's not bold. You've said it politely without really saying it. And it's yes, the AC is a design competition, Stingray, but a lot of people feel, as Clark Chapin and Phil Laffin do in the comments in the chat, software and systems are interesting areas of development and competition, but is it sport, or maybe more importantly, software and systems, let's get back to sailing. Have software and systems overwhelmed the sailing side of the sport?
I personally think we've probably gone a bit too far with the link logic and the level of those controls. I think a step back, it's a little more
to manual
aligned.
control and not the I mean, there's a very fine area, right, between humans controlling the surfaces, controlling the sails, and the humans giving commands to equipment that then does the controlling, and you lose track of the interface, right? And I think a lot of people agree with you on that, Brett, and with Phil Laffin and Clark Chapin. Let's compare quickly, and then we'll get into some other stuff, but not to belabor the America's Cup, but it's still the top. It's the pinnacle event in our sport. Everybody loves to talk about it. Compare and contrast your boat, American Magic, on the right with Luna Rossa Prata Pirelli in a sentence or two, Britt.
I think in a lot of ways, we were perhaps the most similar in some of our thinking. We both went to pretty low profile. They, having upright cycles, of course, couldn't get quite as low as we were. In terms of how the bustle release at getting approaches the transom, and that's all a wetted surface trade-off versus an aerodynamic one. So I think we're quite similar in that philosophy in terms of where the interceptors ended. I think their package was pretty nice generally and had a lot of things going for it. I think we felt there was some different aerodynamic treatments up forward and where we chose to hide the volume in the boat that I was still in favor of, but that was a really tough. I mean, I really feel for those guys because for the sake of one breakdown essentially that caused the tiebreaker, we could have been having an entirely different discussion today.
Yeah, exactly.
But that is part of the racing, right? You can't break down. So,
and it was sad. A very sporting gesture, as usual, by New York Yacht Club teams going by and congratulating Prada after you lost to them. Well, how'd you feel? It's always such a stupid question. How'd you feel? And these commentators now, how upset were you? When they asked on
how many aspirin did you take?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, we had a nice wake. I mean, that's what I'll remember the most is the boat hitting the dock, and I really remember the team around us. You can see the writing on the wall, but no one in that building would admit it, right? You're not going to discuss plans of what's going to happen after you're eliminated. It's not discussed. Everyone's doing everything they can to get to the next point, and that's a pretty amazing thing to be a part of. Certainly was this time.
What was it on the old Wide World of Sports? The agony of defeat.
Yeah,
agony.
Right. The wake after you're knocked out of the cup is an amazing feeling. Losing a challenge is like getting kicked in the gut. Ed Worley says it's worse than that. It's getting like kicked in the lower gut. Ed. Okay, let's compare and contrast. I see Anderson Stingray saying that Anderson Reggio was on the podcast with Justin Chisholm here in the last day or so, and I haven't had time to listen to that yet, but. Anderson Reggio and his dad are longtime friends, and I look forward to that podcast. Thanks for the link, Stingray. How about Britt comparing and contrasting LRPP and Ineos Britannia?
And from the first time I saw Ineos, the boat looks to me like it was optimized to very specific constraints and sort of target operating conditions. And so I think taking their Formula One aspect and letting the computer alter the geometry to find this beautiful, sweet thing. And I think it has advantages. It probably has some advantages when it's in those idealized conditions. The question
which are what?
Well, whichever, ride height, apparent wind angle, very locked in sort of steady state sailing. An optimizer will go find a place where all the little pieces add up and there's some gains. Trying to step back a bit, though, we're operating in varying sea states, and winds that's constantly moving, and the boat's attitude's constantly changing. And so I think the designer in me, that you never have enough information to feed all that, would always sort of step back to a fairer shape that's a little less going to be a little less critical on an idealized operating condition, to have a sort of broader groove, if you will. So, I think our boat sort of exhibited a lot of that. And I said, sometimes the computers you just can't get enough information to feed all that. So you have to trust your intuition and your sense a bit. Those guys, they doubled down and they believed on their software tools, and they got it to work. But certainly the boat was the most tortured of all of them by a long way.
Is that Mercedes F1 input?
I think it's Mercedes F1 technology for sure.
Would you want to have Mercedes F1 with you next time around? I mean, if you were involved in the midst of this S fight between Ben and Jim, between Sir Ben and Sir Jim Ratcliffe, and you had all of Jim's money and the Mercedes F1 and the fact that they got that boat going and got to the match, that puts Ben at a pretty serious disadvantage, doesn't it?
I think it does. I mean, we sort of talked about this. How much of a strength is it or not, given that you have such a short time scale? And I think the Formula One teams bring an incredible amount of sort of high-level engineering ability and probably procedural methods to use a lot of the analysis tools quite efficiently that can be quite valuable.
Exactly.
But we've been designing these things that go in two mediums for a very long time, and so
mediums meaning air and water.
Air and water, right? And there are some unique things about that aren't present in Formula One car design. So it becomes quite a big management challenge, I think, of how you use all those resources to the best ability and achieve it. I think one area they really excelled in is it's probably their instrumentation and their how they instrumented their test boats and the big boat, and pulling analyzing video and analyzing these things that they probably had a much bigger available team and resource to do that than many of the others. And that may have been what allowed them to sort of improve so dramatically on the fly through the regatta.
But bottom line, though, you would agree, you and I talked about this ad nauseum with Bruce Farr and others, but you would agree that going into the next campaign with the core, at least, if not more, of a design team, or the design team that's been through a cycle together, each other's strengths and weaknesses, at least you start to have a feel for what the strengths and weaknesses, not only of the individuals on the team, but of the various aspects of your design program, and that super important interface between the design team and the sailors, which at the end of the day is crucial, right? Absolutely.
And that's the key. And honestly, that's got to be the core advantage Team New Zealand has carried with them for so many years, right?
Exactly.
Is that organization and the trust and the process and the systems, so that you're not starting afresh and having to redevelop all your systems. The overhead associated with that can be pretty astounding, and none of that's helping the boat get faster.
The overhead meaning the financial cost of gearing up a campaign.
Gearing up, but just the actual processes of how are we going to simulate this? What tool are we going to use? what model's going to feed it? How are we going to look at the answer?
And for the uninitiated, you use the word tools. You're talking about the computer programs, the VPPs, the velocity prediction programs, and the CFD programs. You're not talking about an awl and a hammer and a chisel. You're talking about these computer
I'm talking about
tools,
computer simulation tools, and how that simulation stack all works together, and how you boil it all together and say, yes, this is a better design option than that one, and that's our goal. And the more of those you can cycle through, and the better chance you have of finding the sweet spot.
How about going to this final pair in the match? Emirates jumped out to a big lead. A lot of people thought they maybe even sandbagged a little bit to keep the match going longer and to keep it close. I'm not sure I buy that, but compare and contrast, if you would please, these two fine yachts.
I don't think they sandbagged, and I think we saw even in the early prelim regattas when we sailed against them that Team New Zealand's control systems, especially when the waves came up, had some challenges. And so the automation was beautiful in when the conditions are great, and they're not. And I think we, through the match, the conditions were, quite different from some of the breezier conditions we'd had before, and the wave states were quite different, and that can move the optimal zone a bit, and with it, which makes it a bit of a challenge. So I'm not sure. I think Team New Zealand had a great package, and as I said before, ultimately for me, straight line, they're very, very close, probably pluses and minuses, but in the maneuvers, Ineos had maneuverability coming up through the finals was, I think, a strength of theirs against Luna Rossa, and then I think Team New Zealand had another step on that, and 20 meters,
step or two,
but 20 meters in every maneuver. That's all you need to count for those margins. That's it.
In any racing I've ever done, I'd love to gain 20 meters. I'd love to gain a meter on my opposition or competition, right? Yeah. Britt, that's fabulous stuff and great insight. Stingray kind of wraps it up well too. Stingray, as you know, is my friend. You probably don't know his real name, do you? He's in a witness protection program up in Seattle. You see him,
Seattle, yeah.
You see him in the Sailing Anarchy forums, and he says here in the comments, he's a retired software geek engineer for Boeing, and so he knows a little bit about this field. He says the integration scripting, he uses a term of art, I guess, is the biggest point of contention in the British divorce. Oh, that's Alex Hayworth. I'm reading the wrong comment. Yeah. That's interesting. I'll come back to that comment. But Stingray is saying there are many great aero tools and many great hydro tools, but few combine the two fields well. Britt.
Oh, absolutely. And that's how like I said, we're operating in two mediums. So how do you efficiently generate highly accurate solutions, and it's how big are your computers and how you're fitting that data, and always comes back to what your underlying assumptions are. So if you start with the wrong assumptions, you can quite quickly end up in a bad place.
Yeah, and that's fabulous sport.
That's some of the danger of optimizers, right? Where they're just going somewhere and does it make sense or not, and
common sense. That's what the politics have come to in this country, Britt. I promised we wouldn't get into politics here. You notice Julia's leaning to the right a bit now.
Yep.
The other way, Julia. As the show progresses, most of us slump down like this. Julia leans further to the right, just like her politics. Alex Hayworth is saying, replying to Stingray, the integration scripting is the biggest point of contention in the British divorce proceedings. What does that mean, Britt, the integration scripting?
Well, it's exactly right. So this tool chain that can be geometry, whether I've drawn it or it's automatically been created, and then it has to be some computational mesh has to go over it, and then it has to be run in the simulation code that's simulating the flow over it, and the forces come out of that, and then those forces get fed into a simulator or VPP, and so on. So every one of those steps is often a different tool. Every one of those steps has to be strung together by some sort of scripting mechanism, and so there's an awful lot of intellectual property in those pieces.
That sounds like it's going with Ineos Britannia with Sir Jim.
And I would expect that to be the case, from what I understand of their of how their agreements are structured.
Exactly. Well, we shall see. As I say, it's the golden rule, and sometimes the gold is not literally gold. Sometimes it's intellectual property. It's intellectual. It's capital and personnel, and especially on a design team. I just know how hard it is to start from scratch for a design team, having been through that. Clark Chapin says, I get all, he's a retired engineer at Generous Motors. I get all squishy when Britt talks all technical like that.
Yes, indeed.
Okay, Brent, let's get off the cup and wrap up here. And you can get back to your parents unless you can stay for that. You're an Aussie. You probably want to stay and talk with us about Harry Price and the Aussie 18s of Skiffs. Let's talk about this. I'm going to back this up. This video I've got, I told you about in the Tech Check gang, and this is from Sail GP. It just came out, speaking of the Brits. It's a really cool kind of 1 minute and change video, 1.5 minute video that Sir Ben and his team put out. And as you probably know, Britt, I asserted during the Cup that Ben should get off the boat and let Dylan and the rest of his gang run the boat, and he should run the campaign, and they would have been much better off. And of course, he didn't take my advice, stayed on the boat. And I hear, one hears, and I don't, this is, who knows, because I'm not the divorce lawyer for either one of them. But in the divorce, I hear that was a big part of it, that Jim wanted Ben off the boat. He wanted Ben to run the campaign. In fact, he didn't want Ben to run the campaign. He wanted David, help me with the name.
And
Dean, who was the COO, the Kiwi. And Ben said, no, I'm going to be the CEO going forward, and yada, yada. And this is what, and I may even keep my options open to be on the boat. And I hear that's a lot to do with the problems at hand. But nonetheless, they are doing, now that Ben's off the boat, and it's taken them a few events, but the Brits look like they're the top team in Sail GP. Would you agree?
I think they're right up there. I mean, it's, I think the Australians had a really great weekend, great too.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, in a sense, it's because they're on these same platforms and the fleet racing, there's a lot of different ingredients going on here, I think.
Let's look at the video and see what you think after the video.
So a quick update on Sydney Sail GP, how it went down. Well, it went down pretty well from an Emirates GBR perspective. The team got into the final for the third time in a row for this season 5 in Sail GP, but this time went all the way and won it, which was just brilliant to see.
Have some of that.
A fantastic weekend of racing. I think one of the best that we've seen with Sail GP on the beautiful, iconic Sydney Harbour. Plenty of action with the teams trying to get to grips with these new T-foils in challenging conditions. And we saw some fantastic racing, some big wipeouts, some pretty intense moments. It was really great to watch. For our team, like I said, a fantastic result. Managed to dig themselves out of a few challenging positions, particularly on Saturday, but also to win a couple of races then and also on the Sunday. And of course, get into that final race where had a good tussle particularly with our mate Giles Scott and Team Canada. Traded a lead on a number of occasions, but managed to just get past on the final upwind leg to take the victory, and the home favourite Aussie team coming home in third place after sailing particularly well in the opening races. So another great event for Sail GP. I think season 5's proving to be an absolute barnstormer so far. Long may that continue, and we're looking forward now to the first ever double header in Sail GP with Los Angeles and San Francisco coming up in March.
And only a week apart. What do you think of Sail GP, Britt?
I mean, I'm still annoyed at kilometers per hour, but besides that,
you and everybody on here.
I know.
Yeah.
No, I think you look at the grandstands in Auckland, and I think it says it all, that they've built a property that is drawing the people in, and it's exciting. It's everything you need. I think now that we're getting that the events are strung together, we have so many events, then maybe the schedule makes a little more sense. Before, when we were waiting 6 weeks between events, but the whole thing was done and dusted in 2 days, it seemed a bit out of balance. But now that we know they'll be back on the water in a couple of weeks, it perhaps makes some more sense. I don't know. It's the penalty points for some of these things that can destroy someone's season. I'm not sure about that. It seems a bit, I don't know. It's not being solved on the water, right?
A bit over the top, but I think they've got to protect the boats, and when the leagues, not even the boats that they don't own, that the team technically now owns, the league still is maintaining and in effect providing them in the spare parts. So I think they're just maybe overreacting to that. Hey, Britt, I'm getting questions. They're starting now to even text me directly. They want to know about Pensacola. There's been some stuff, I guess, in the Sailing Anarchy forum and otherwise, and we know Tom Pace, the Commodore of past Commodore, I guess he is now, and he's a good friend and love him to death. Actually, a cool guy. Do you think American Magic is big picture, long-term plans in Pensacola, and is that good for the team?
I think, well, they definitely have big plans for Pensacola, and I believe the ship just arrived with all the
from Barcelona,
assets from Barcelona to Pensacola. So, no, things will be standing up there, and I think we see that as American Magic's home to be, and really make it a sailing center beyond the America's Cup. And so there's a lot of effort going on there, a lot of renovations, shed construction, things are happening there. You've got a bunch of the GL52 sailing down there right now. There's a foiling week coming up in Pensacola and in beginning of March. So, no, I think it's that, Pensacola has really, opened their arms to American Magic. I think the entire team feels pretty at home there, and it's a pretty amazing place to sail. So,
well, you're sailing inside Escambia Bay, but do you get out into the Gulf Gulf of America?
We went out into the Gulf, and that was with the first Patriot, and that sort of really opened our eyes as design teams about what sailing in waves was going to mean, and how big an impact it could have on how they sail a boat and how the boat should be designed to deal with that. So we learned a lot sailing inside and outside.
Okay, well, let's thank Britt, Julia, very much for coming on.
Yes, as always.
And
Terrific.
Britt knows that I'm going to ask questions. I'm a talk show, and I'm going to say, let's get on and talk about the Chesapeake. He called me up. You called me up and said,
I called you for this one.
I didn't bug you about coming on. He said, I'd like to come on and promo. So let's do one more promo for this upcoming. Can people still register? And if they can't make it there on, what is it, the 14th, 15th? What's the date?
14th. It's the 14th, 15th. You can register for both days or just one.
And if you can't get there, though, how do you get the papers afterwards?
You can't get there. You can register for the same rate as a one-day rate, and then you'll get access when it's over to download the papers and the presentations on video. And if you still can get to Annapolis, but you don't want to come to the papers, there's a big reception on the Friday night, and you can buy a ticket just for that. So,
and that's all online at where?
CSYSonline.com.
CSYSonline.com.
Yep. And that'll take you to the registration site with all the information.
And you and your very smart and lovely wife, Jay, are co-hosting this.
We are. We'll be there. So.
Great stuff. Okay.
With bells on, as they say.
With
bells on, that's right.
Okay. Well, thanks for all that. And as I was saying, you always, I'm going to ask questions about who knew that we're going to ask you about Sail GP, but you had to get in.
You got to be ready. I'm ready.
Thanks. So you are also another one of these guests of ours who probably is well qualified to be either the foreign minister or the Secretary of State or maybe the Secretary General of the United Nations before we're done here. Britt, can you stay with us for the next segment about Harry Price? Great
Absolutely.
Stuff. Let's get on with then the skiffs, because Harry Price and his team have just done fabulous stuff. Another outstanding victory. This was this past Sunday by the recently crowned Australian 18 skiff champion, Rag and Famish Hotel team. They call them the Rag. which, you know,
How did they get that name?
well, it's because I guess it's Aussie. Brit probably knows. I mean, here in the States, if you said you're on the rag, everybody thinks you're having your menstrual period,
Yeah.
right? And that doesn't sound very good. But in Australia, apparently the rag is the famous 18-footer.
Aha.
ID.
Rag and Famish Hotel pub I think it's in Sydney, and they've sponsored an 18-footer for as long as I can remember. I think they were sponsoring them when I was a kid in Perth.
Aha.
So
I remember
as a team.
Travelodge going back.
Yeah, and those Travelodge and Color 7. Ian Murray's was Color 7 and things like that. But I think Rag they go back a ways, if not that far. So
The rag. Anyway, I haven't used the rag just because, you know, I don't want
Yeah.
anybody to think poorly of me here, more poorly than they already do, you two croutons. I can hear you both laughing at me. But the Rag and Famish Hotel team on Sydney Harbour last Sunday sealed they still got one more event to go, the 24-25 Australian 18-footers League Club Championship. So Harry and his team of Max Paul and Finn Rodowitz, we would say in it's Eastern European, although there's still one more race to be sailed in the series. His team now, they have won the States, the New South Wales Championship. They won the Australian Nationals, which is a separate regatta, and now they've won this league championship, this club league championship, which after a long talking last night with Dolly DeVola and with David Price, with Harry's dad, Pricey, and Christiane was on in the background, and she was chiming in as well. So I got a lot of good oil, as the Aussies and Kiwis would say, about what's going on. With their usual brilliant boat handling skills, the Rag team were superb in the 15 to 18 knot southerly wind to score a 1 minute, 30-second win over Vycobi, Kirk Mitchell, Andrew Stevenson, and Daniel Barnett, which pushed the winner to the end with this team, Rag team, with their best performance of the season. It's known here, Pricey's on here now, he's saying it's known here as the Rag. Go the Rag, woohoo. Yeah, okay. The Rag. Britt, we got to get to that bar. Julia loves Australia. We should pack Julia up, get her on a private plane down there since she's made so much money in the stock market. You could afford a private flight down there.
Oh, sure.
And Britt can fly here and join us, and you can take us private to Australia.
What a good idea.
Britt?
Way to do it. I'm all on board. Yeah.
So anyway, these kids, I mean, I've known Harry Price from the Gov Cup now for the better part of, I guess, 8, 9, 10 years. But he is really having a season of it. With the league's season point score series nearing an end, Balmain and Rag and Fame, that's another team, Balmain and the Rag share the lead on 78 points, yada, yada. Next Sunday will be critical, not so much for Rag, but this is the penultimate race of the season point score. I think this is from this previous Sunday, because I think the Rag now has wrapped up this league and you could watch it live, yada, yada. Mm-hmm. So here is, back up a notch. There is our good friend, Harry Price, and I'm so pleased because, as Julia knows, Andy Rose, all those years that Harry came and then won the Gov Cup, Andy couldn't get more than 2 words out of him at the Monday night dinner and so on. And I've managed to, and Harry's famously shy, and he sticks to sailing, and he's not a big gas bagger like us, like me anyway, and Andy Rose. And I managed to get a paragraph or 2 out of him yet again, and here's that video from this morning.
G'day, Tom, and all of Sailing Illustrated. It's Harry here from Rag and Famish 18-foot skiff team. We've got the JJ Giltinan Championships coming up in 2 weeks, and me and my team of Max Paul and Finn Rodowitz have had quite a good season this far, just managing to win a few of the club championships, and we're looking forward to taking that momentum into the World Championships in 2 weeks and see what we can do. Hopefully we get a range of conditions to be able to put our best foot forward. And we've got this wonderful live stream that we have each and every week, and hopefully many of you out there, Sailing Illustrated followers, get onto it and have a little watch here and there. You can watch all of them on demand or anything like that, but definitely for the World Championships, every race will be live streamed, and any support is good, and it's quite good that we are able to showcase the sport of sailing, just like Tom does each and every week with all of his weekly shows and highlights and all of that. But yeah, I think moving forward, we're just hoping to get some good conditions, and we'll see how we go. Cheers.
That was a 1.5-minute video.
Wow.
From Harry, and it's one of my favorite, if not my favorite, sailing families in the world. As you know, the Priceys, I'm sure, Britt and Julia, by osmosis here on the show, Christian and David, Pricey, and Pricey is the dad, as David is known, and their daughter Olivia, who's the Olympic, silver medalist in 2012 in match racing, in the women's match racing, and was in Barcelona sailing for the Australian, steering this is Olivia Price, is the Australian Women's America's Cup team, and Harry Price, who is not only doing this famously good in the skiffs, in the Aussie 18s, he is also doing a 40 and a very serious 49er campaign. I mean, they're already, this is 3 years left to go to the Olympics, three years and change. And he and Max Paul, whom I also know from GovCup, are doing this 49er campaign, and they're into the physio, they're into the training 6 days a week.
Wow.
Full on. And I think they will be a power in the 49er class for Australia. In fact, Mr. Past President, the esteemed past president, Alistair Murray, is on here saying Harry Price and Max Paul, they'll be campaigning. Julia Catherine Shaw is saying, come on, Julia, come on down, we'll look after you. And Alistair agreeing that's a long speech for Harry and David Price. Pricey's a girl. Ted Ryman. Harry's a very cool kid. Let me start over. Harry is a very cool, nice kid, Ted Ryman is saying. Tom Ogletree said he watched the 18-footers on replay every Sunday morning religiously. Best sailing I've seen, and I want to do it. Britt, you grew up in Perth. When did you move from WA to the U.S.?
1990.
How old were you?
91, 17.
So you were there for the 86, 7
Yep.
Cup, and did that inspire you to want to design boats and get involved in the America's Cup, or were you from a sailing family? What was your deal?
No, I was sailing because every day I'd drive around the river and it'd be covered with more sailcloth than would cover the whole river if you laid it out flat. So that was just something to do.
The Swan River.
Swan River. And so I'd been building boats and sailing before that, but the Cup sort of inspired me for engineering. It was art, it was science, it was everything. Ben Lexon had come up with that wing keel, and it seemed an arena where you had to make choices very quickly, I guess designs develop. You have a very short period to get there on the start line, and that into art and science have to come together to pull that off. And so that, and a family friend, Bill Langan, formerly of Sparkman Stevens, that was the designer of America too.
The late great,
and he was down there in Fremantle, and I found out he went to Webb, and that's how I found out about Webb.
Oh, did he get you into Webb?
Oh, he told me not to go.
Oh, he did. But Webb is one of the toughest schools in the country. It's very small, and it focuses on engineering and I guess naval architecture, but it's free tuition, right? The thing is,
it's free tuition for American citizens, and yes, you better you double major naval architecture, marine engineering. That's it. So you better like it. And there's not a lot of yacht design. You have to put that on top yourself. But
well, what do you think Harry's chances are?
He's having they say a blinder of a season. I mean, how can you deny that? So I'll be pulling for him. I think it's great. But I think that everything you need to know about how great a sailor he is that he's there at Gov Cup, sailing not skiffs, not apparent wind sailing, and still doing really well there too, right? So
that's what you said in the tech check. It's just amazing how good the kid is. And we always said growing up, and still on this show, any number of people say it almost every week, that the more sailing you do and the various disciplines and the different types of boats, and the better off you are as a sailor. And I think Harry's proving that in spades, yes?
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, that's the RAG story.
Nice story.
Maybe the backstory. Tell us, Britt, for those of us, I mean, I've been following it for years. We covered on this show. How important is the JJ Giltonen? The JJ, it's the intergalactic for the 18-footers, the skiff, and it's a week-long or a 10-day-long event here coming up in March. How important is that for Australians and for the sport?
I mean, it's one of those really long-standing sort of pinnacle events. You know, it's been there forever. It's a touchstone event, you know, and I think when I grew up in Perth, we had a fleet of 18-foot skiffs, and you know, we had a couple of big national championships, and I'd go out and watch those, and that's still some of the most exciting sailing I've ever seen, and some of the most ferocious wipeouts I've ever seen. And then I remember having one of the first televised circuits where they sailed a fleet of 18-foot skiffs at different cities around Australia, not just the major ones. They sailed out of Albany, and they had live mics on the cruise with cameras on helmets, and they weren't small cameras back then. Just so the class itself it's not just incredible performance, but it's sort of showcased, just sort of was at the forefront of some of these event structures as well. I think that's also where they learned they should put a mic delay on live sailing mics.
Yeah.
Well, they are doing super well, and we're proud of Harry. You know, I've gotten, as I said, know him from Gov Cup, but and Max Paul as well, and the kid who's crewing for him in the 49er, whose name is what? Gus. Help me out here. Gus Williams is also apparently a Gov Cup alumni. The biggest threats, alumnus. Thank you, Julia. That's Britt. That's why we have to have somebody from Stanford and somebody from Webb on the show to correct those of us that went to a simple public school like Michigan. The biggest threats to the rag team before the JJs look like this from Sail World. Look likely to Mr. Queasley to come from the Yandu and the former Australian champion Finport Finance, skippered by Keegan York, which has shown good potential in a number of races. Just behind the experienced combinations are a number of young teams showing potential, and their closest on the racetrack is going to be an asset as they push each other closer to the more experienced big three. So here are, besides the rag, the big three include Yandu and this aforementioned Balmain. And I don't know much about either of them. Do you, Brett?
No, I don't know a lot about them.
But what I do hear is that Peter Shipway, who's doing the broadcasting, along with Dolly Devola.
Oh, good.
With Andrew Devola, and that's why he's coming on the show on March 4th to preview this. This is just an astonishing circuit. It has been for how long? 80, 90? A long time.
Long time.
Closing in on 100 years, right? Something like that. And the JJ is the 8th through the 16th. So the previous Saturday, I think, through the Sunday, that is in March, the JJ Giltonen, the 18-foot skiff championship in Sydney, and we'll look forward to seeing that. Graham Sweeney says, I'm suffering numbness about alumnus. I just am. My, what a big bowsprit you have there, Clark Chapin is saying. Alistair Murray, the esteemed past president of Australian Sailing, saying that it dates from 1938.
Aha.
That event. Okay, well, we're looking forward to it. We're looking forward to having Andrew Devola, Dolly Devola on.
Watching the skips race on Sydney Harbor is just fabulous.
You've done it.
Many times.
Well, organize us a bloody private plane. Brett will fly out here, and we'll all fly from SFO to SYD.
Yes.
Nonstop in luxury and comfort. And we'll watch
Anytime.
it. And we'll cover it. I can take a studio down. You know, we can pack up some of our equipment here, go down there.
Good idea.
And do, maybe not, because they're going to show it live on YouTube anyway. But we could do a morning show.
We could.
We could get Andy Rose to come down there and interview everybody. We'd get Ian Murray over there, the big fella. That'd be good. Gus is a turncoat now. Ha ha. This is David Price, Pricey, Harry's dad, saying, ha ha, sailing against us. He bloody good. Yeah, they're good. Bravo Zulu to them all, and Bravo Zulu to all the Aussies. This show's all about Aussies today, Brett.
Yeah, it is. It is.
It's all Aussie, but it's that time of year. There's not a lot going on. Ben Lexon won it in 1961.
Remember it well.
The designer of Australia 2, Julie. You probably
Yes.
remember that. Or
Indeed.
who designed Australia 2, Britt? Was it Ben Lexon or was it the Dutch?
I'm still with Ben Lexon on it, but another Mr. Van Osanen doesn't is still writing about it. So we'll see.
Did you see this? Mary Longpree is going to join us on your plane, Julia.
Oh, great
You
idea.
got a seat for her? Mary's going to
No
fly
question.
down and she's going to shoot the races. John Emmett's already there. Chris Fury says we'll get him to stay over if he's stay over a little longer. We'll get Alistair Murray over there.
Uh-huh.
We'll get Greg Phillips. We'll get everybody, all and Pedro Foiling Sailor. We'll have a FOSI fest in Sydney. Britt, thanks a lot for joining us. I'll let you go back to your parents. We appreciate very much you coming on for what? It must be the 8th, 9th, 10th time?
I don't know.
Over the
Something
years?
like it's been a few times. I
Been a
can't
few
believe
times.
it's nine years since you started. So
Uh-oh, Brett,
We can't either.
we got- I know, it's hard to believe we've done 809 shows. We keep saying
it's
that.
amazing.
But we got one other person who's going to join us on the plane. Do you see this, Julia?
Oh.
You got Claire Harrington, the Vice Commodore.
Oh, great
Claire
idea.
the Brilliant. Magnus the Magnificent calls her. We call her CTB, Britt, for short. Claire
Yeah.
the Brilliant. She
Claire the
says,
Brilliant.
may I
Love it.
join? And Graham Sweeney's offering to fly the jet. I'm not sure we want Graham sitting right seat in that jet, let alone left seat. Thanks for that.
Yes.
Thanks to all of you. We could probably, Julia, where you're getting up there, we could probably charter a sizable plane. There's a lot of people who probably come here to San Francisco on their own nickel and then fly with you on your private jet.
Oh, wouldn't that be fun?
That would be good
If
fun.
I only had one.
Stingray wants to know if there's a bar on this jet, if it's well equipped enough for both himself and Julie to survive that long a flight.
Ah, yes.
And if so, I think Stingray might even come out of his witness protection program. You might get to see his face and know. I know Stingray and I know his real name. But Claire, I don't know if you all know this, but Claire Harrington
Oh,
is a pilot.
Yes.
I don't know if she's if she's approved on that type on a jet. We wouldn't fly down there on a prop plane, but I know she flies prop planes. She may be jet certified too. Did you know that Leo Takahashi's father, Rob Fry, is a pilot?
Maybe.
I didn't know that until last night, and I heard that Rob is flying from New Zealand. They live in Auckland, of course. He's flying up to Australia in a small plane, and then he's going to fly some kind of a marathon plane thing where they sail. I was going to say where they fly small planes around Australia in some kind of a marathon. Have you ever heard about that, Britt?
I haven't heard of the
Oh,
no,
we got
that's news to me.
Yeah, I've never heard of it either. But now we got another pilot. Ted Ryman is saying he's going to talk Jonathan Frank into piloting your jet, Julia.
Oh, yes.
You know Jonathan Frank, Britt, he is a 777 pilot for United, lives in Houston as a sailor and is a drinking friend now of Ted Ryman in Cape Town. The FOSI meet up, Britt.
Yes.
Yeah.
They get around the world and they meet up. Thanks very much for coming out. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks so much.
Much appreciated.
Yeah.
Okay.
I know.
Julia, what a great guy, huh?
Yeah, no question.
Huh? How are we so lucky?
I don't know.
So carry on.
No. I was going to say it's not by accident.
Not by accident. You're probably right. See, everybody wants to get on your private plane to go to Sydney for the JJ.
Uh-huh.
And, it's also good timing because they could come here and do the Sail GP
Right.
either in LA and or in San Francisco
Right.
in the middle of all that.
Let's all dream.
Julia, we're in the pink of life today. I saw when you came down and had that pink, what do you call it, a shawl or a...
Yeah. Pashima.
What's a shima?
Pashima.
Oh, a pashima. Oh, my goodness.
Half wool and half
I should have
silk.
warned Britt to come on with something in pink. And I've got in honor of Harry Price, I've got what shoulders it on? I got my Gov Cup, my Balboa Yacht Club pullover, jumper as the Brits would call it, and a pink shirt to match to match the, why are we talking about this?
I don't know.
This day in history. Speaking of this being an Australian show, do you know, Julia, what happened this week in history? It actually happened a couple days ago. On the 16th of Feb, Pashmina, Fritz Mueller's saying that's what that is. A Pashmina. Thank you, Fritz Mueller, down in Miami. What happened, Julia, on this day in history? in 2002. It's not this day this week. It happened a couple days ago on the 16th. Pashmina illustrated bannerole. Julia, what happened on this date?
202.
202. Here is a clue. Does that help? And it's the Olympics, and yes, it's the Winter Olympics. No, it's not ice boating, but it is Australian. You see Australia there on his left hip.
Yes.
Let's see, the FOSI must know. The Aussies must know what happened. I'll give you another hint. His name is Stephen Bradbury. Stephen John Bradbury. Come on, you FOSI. You Australians must know. Bradbury. Alistair Murray got it. And who is Bradbury? Doing a Bradbury. Stephen Bradbury won gold. Chris Fury gets it. That's the answer, Chris Fury. He did a Bradbury from behind. He barely qualified for the final heat. One hears or one reads today in putting this together.
Yeah.
And he's an Australian, a former short track speed skater and 4-time Olympian. He won the 1,000 meter event at the 2002 Winter Olympics 2 days ago on the 16th of February 2002. He was the first athlete, get this, the first athlete from Australia and also the first from the Southern Hemisphere to win a Winter Olympic gold medal.
Yeah.
And he was also part of the short track relay team that won Australia's first Winter Olympic medal, albeit a bronze, in 1994. The nature of his gold medal win, a relative veteran and rank outsider, he came through from last place in the final straight as the entire field ahead crashed out on the final corner, becoming iconic of underdog success and perseverance at the Olympic Games. And you would think poorly of me, Julie, if I didn't have the video. I'll probably get a copyright strike from the IOC, but here 'tis. He's that trailing guy. And he passes them all and wins the gold. This week in history, 2002. Hear the boos?
He looks pretty happy about it.
He does look pretty happy. He looked even happier afterwards at the medal ceremony. Last man standing, never gave up, Chris Fury is saying, and Clark Chapin is saying, in order to finish first you got to finish.
That's true.
That's true. I learned that in Formula One. So there he is. Bravo Zulu to him. This week in history in 2002. So that was a few years ago, Julia.
Yes.
And he's now a television commentator.
Oh, is he?
Yeah, as all Olympic, former Olympic medal winners aspire to be, I guess, or most do. Anyway, thanks to Greg Phillips he passed that along to me, and I was going to use it either as correct or Curtonic, or in the at the end of the show in Whiskey Tango Foxtrot. But I thought, this day in history, it's close enough, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Sure.
It was a drop bear move, cramps me. And he's part of, Alistair Murray is saying he's part of Australian folklore. Yeah, I gathered that from reading on Wikipedia and otherwise. We should do a quick look in. There's only 4 teams left, 3 left on the track. 1 just finished today in the Vendée Globe, the 10th edition. And today is...
My gosh.
Day 100. It's hard to believe, isn't it?
It makes me tired to think about it.
Day 100. Now, this gentleman is the first ever Chinese sailor to finish, and maybe even sail. I couldn't quite work that out. And notice again, his left hand is not correct. The guy managed to get through the race and finish as the first Chinese. Jinghoon Zhu, apparently from China, the first Chinese skipper. He finished 30th. And he did it in grand style. I got the video of him finishing today, visibly exhausted, but full of joy of having accomplished an extraordinary feat, making history as not only the first Chinese skipper ever to start and finish the legendary solo nonstop race from a field of accomplished, talented sailors. His is a truly remarkable and inspiring achievement for a mountain boy who lost his left arm at age 12 and had to go to an internet cafe to learn what sailing was before falling in love with it and the ocean and its many challenges. Since his accident, he has sought to prove to others what can be achieved by sharing a vision and sheer determination. Through his racing circumnavigation, the 35-year-old Zhu carries a strong message, hoping that his journey will inspire other young people in China and elsewhere to dare to dream big and realize that determination and self-belief are the most important assets on a journey to achieve what others consider to be close to impossible. And look at the reception he received much earlier today as he sailed into Les Sables d'Olonne.
Today
is my dream come true. It's an incredibly emotional moment for me. There in the lower thirds. Arrival of Jinkun Zhu, well done. He's being shouted to by the other boats. He had to climb the mast a couple times with one hand. We've worked so hard and given so much to get here, he says. It feels amazing. What a reception.
Yes. Great.
Despite being 30th.
Never mind.
Exactly.
Just attempting that race
Exactly.
is
100%, Julie, you're so right. It's very difficult to pinpoint the most difficult moment because everyone knows it's the toughest race in the world. Throughout the race, we go through so many experiences, some more challenging than others. And we face numerous obstacles and storms. Or if we had to choose one moment, I'd say it was 5 days ago when I lost my onboard energy system.
Oh my.
For the first time, I truly thought I might have to abandon the race. Can you imagine getting that far?
Awful.
No one expected me to face this problem, but I did. And fixed it, obviously. Dealt with it. Overcame it. Look at that crowd on day 100.
That's great.
Okay, and three more to finish. There is Jinkun Zhu at the top, having just finished 99 days yesterday. Much earlier today, I think he actually finished today. Maybe they wrote the press release today. That's why it was dated today. And then three more, two from France. And do you recognize the flag of Dennis van Venberg? What country's flag is that, Julia?
Germany.
No.
No.
Close. That is Belgium.
Oh,
That's the Belgian flag.
I don't know that.
It looks like he will. And look at how far back there. 1,800 miles, 2,000 miles, and 2,150. Almost, 2,100 miles.
Yeah, he still has only 2,100 miles to go.
Exactly.
Oh.
The poor guy. Yeah, that's Gordon Smith knew that was Belgium's flag. He has to be on the list for the Sailing Illustrated Person of the Year 2025. Gordon Smith is saying that is a good thought.
Mm-hmm.
Let's Clark Chapin maybe will make a note of that. Gordon no doubt will as well. But bravo Zulu to all of them. It looks like we're going to get these last three finishers. Not for a while. Not for a while.
Oh, yeah.
But they're still racing. They haven't dropped out. Bravo Zulu to them.
Yeah, I'm really proud of him for doing that.
Okay, good stuff. That gets us to the last leg, Julia.
Yes.
A little bit different last leg than in the past, but I thought well worth airing this. And this is apropos what we talked about some weeks ago in Shetland, in Scotland.
Yes.
And their annual fire festival.
Yes.
Here it is.
Oh,
the
yes.
Viking festival called Up Heli Ah.
Oh, yes.
And now we have a video of what actually took place. We had video from the leading up to that,
Yeah.
when they burn the big Viking ship.
Right.
Well, Up Heli as you will remember, is a type of fire festival held annually from January to March in various communities in Shetland and Scotland, up in the islands where Graham Sweeney is, to mark the end of the Yule season and really the hoped-for start of the spring. Each festival involves a torch-lit procession by squads of costumed participants known as, I guess it's geysers, that culminates in the burning of an imitation Viking galley. The largest festival held in Lerwick, Shetland's capital, involves a procession of up to 1,000 geysers who march through the streets of Lerwick on the last Tuesday in January. And no, I don't think Graham's in this photo. It's from a few years ago, but Graham sent this video of this year's festival and the big finale.
Ooh.
How cool is that?
Yep.
As Alan Long says. Now, Julia,
Sir.
I have a favor to ask.
Yes.
Would you charter another plane and take us there? Next year, we'll finally get to meet Graham Sweeney in person.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
We'll go to that festival. We'll see if somehow we can be permitted to be a geyser or two or
Yeah,
three.
but it's very difficult.
Well, it sounds like you have to practice. You have to be there for 5 years or something.
Yeah.
Didn't we hear on a
Yeah.
month ago?
Yeah.
And Stingray says, wow, I hope we don't plan on trying to take Shetland too. But I want to be there with one of those torches,
Yeah.
throw it into the Viking galley and be able to, it's like Las Fallas in Valencia. You do it once anyway. I wonder
Yeah.
how many times Graham has done it. There's no losing the battle when you have burnt your boat. That's right.
Mm-hmm.
Like that Hunt for Red October, when who was the lead actor? Sean Connery
Yeah.
tells his team, we told our fleet that they're chasing us because Cortez, when he reached the New World, burned his boat, so his guys had to be tough and strong and good.
Yeah.
And indeed, so Sean Connery in that movie, Hunt
Yes.
for Red October, told both his fleet so they'd chase him, but so that the Americans would also know it was coming. And he hoped he'd be rescued, and he was. That was a great movie. My favorite of all time. I will let you borrow my flamethrower, says Clayton Emily.
Okay.
Okay, Clark J, lots of clever comments. Thanks for that. That is Tuesday the 28th of January, Up Helia in Scotland, and that courtesy, that video this morning from Graham Sweeney, I thought made a perfect final leg video for today's show.
Yes.
Julia, which gets us to guess what? Whiskey,
Oh, my friend.
Tango Foxtrot, and your friend, where we wrap up the show with the odd joke in good taste.
Thank you.
And they're all in good taste.
Oh, good.
With the possible exception of one. Now, do you know, Julia, who this gentleman is?
No.
Neither did I, nor did I. But we referred to him on the show the other day, and this came through, apropos our reference to the gentleman whose name is Jeffrey, a.k.a. Jethro. He named himself after Jethro Bodine in the Beverly Hillbillies. That's a Brit comic and singer named Jeffrey Rowe, who died a few years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And according to Wikipedia, his stand-up act made use of his strong Cornish accent and rural style of dress with a, quote, no-holds-barred, foul-mouthed, and sexually explicit routine, Julia.
Uh-oh.
Do you remember the one we played the other day of him? It was all of that and more. He was sometimes criticized by incorporating racism, sexism, and homophobia into his act, Julia.
If you're going to do it, might as well do it.
And apropos that, we have one of his best jokes. I hope you appreciate this.
Last week, of course, I live near the St. Morgan Naval Air Station, and we get all the Americans down there, and they come to take my daughters out. Bastards. Last Tuesday night, a knock come to the door, and a man said, good evening. My name is Lance. I've come to see your daughter Nance. I'd like to take her to the dads. Any chance? I said, I don't know. I said, Nance, there's a man called Lance that'd like to take you to the dance. Any chance? Yeah, she said, I'll be right down. Well, the one very long for the door knock again, and the man said, good evening. My name is Joe. I come to see your daughter, Flo. I'd like to take her to the show. Do you think she'll go? I said, I don't know. I'll ask her. I said, Flo, there's a man called Joe. I'd like to take you to the show. Will you let her go? Yeah, she said, I'll be getting right down. Well, the one very long before the door knock again, and the man said, good evening. My name is Tucker.
Clean. It's clean.
It is.
Come on.
It is.
Huh?
Yep.
I wanted to get your, I cut the camera 3 with the picture-in-picture to get your reaction to that one, Julia. Did you like that?
Yes.
That was clean. That courtesy of Graham Sweeney. He also sent that one along. Now, you know, there's been an ongoing debate here on this show. We talk about ice hockey and the Canadians and the Americans and the 4 nations. But there's this ongoing debate about whether soccer, the beautiful game, is better than the more, shall we say, rough and tumble game of rugby. And we have a video apropos that. Okay, we did it. All you rugby players, we did it. And the only better game than rugby is ice hockey. Right, Julia? Come on.
I won't agree with that.
You see, Clay, apropos that Jethro joke, this Clay Embley is saying, my name is Bucky. I'm from Kentucky. I'm here to see your wife and get lucky. Rick Bannerow sent that one, and he's not even probably a soccer or rugby player, but who knows? Okay, Julia, this is clean, sort of.
Sort of.
Sort of. Our last one. This is from Greg Phillips. I applied the hemorrhoid cream that you gave me this morning, and I got a very nasty reaction. Where exactly did you apply it?
On the bus.
On the bus.
Oh.
Well, it's clean.
Yeah.
Okay, that came from Greg Phillips down under. Oh, we have one more. I forgot. We have one from Claire, the brilliant. CTB sent this one along. All the musical ones normally come from Claire. To clear their minds of all stressors, many people are turning to the relaxation and serenity of tuba.
Yes.
Claire is texting me about being a tuba player this morning, and Tommy the tuba.
Yep.
In high school, marching band and in concert band. Thank you, Claire the Brilliant. CTB for that one. That gets us, thank God, Julia, to the finish line. And you like to say at this point in the show.
Yeah. Do like, follow, and share, because share is geometrically preferable.
Well, they're all important. And by the way, if you are watching in replay, as many of you do, comments are welcome, even in replay. We leave them open. And one of the very few live shows in the, well, it's the only live show in the sport, but one of the very few live shows on YouTube or Facebook to leave comments open too, because our FOSI.
We did have one somebody today.
But you go through and cut them out.
Yep.
And we will in replay, too. If somebody leaves a crotonic comment, no name calling, no personal attacks, no coarse language.
Correct.
Correct?
Correct.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Mark Holland. Thanks to all of you. Thanks to the who support us via Patreon. Become a patron if you haven't already. A lot of you have. Patreon.com/join/Sailing Illustrated. Thank you very much for your support. Thanks to everybody who gives us audio, video, and images, including today's show. Julia, final thoughts?
We had a lovely combination of festivals today.
We did. Well, we got around the world again, too.
Yeah.
Lots of different topics.
Yeah.
Great to have Britton Ward on.
Yeah. Yes,
Fabulous,
he is.
smart
He is
guy.
really good. Yeah.
Diplomatic, but
Yes.
he also, I think there were some real gems in what he said, too.
Yeah.
The people from other teams and maybe beyond will be parsing his words.
Yes.
And congratulations to Harry Price and his team. We'll be watching them, following them carefully, whether or not Julia gets us a plane to get down there to see it in person.
Yeah.
And then we got Sail GP coming up next month here in California, LA, and San Francisco, back to back. Brit was wonderful fun. Rick Banner says, "Ruck on." Catch the 18s on YouTube, indeed. Steve Atkins is saying, and we will do that. And remember, this Friday we have another great guest. This will be Coach John Rogers from San Diego Yacht Club, formerly from the Coronado Yacht Club. And he will be updating us, telling us about the burgeoning, about the growing sport of radio-controlled yachts, at least in this country, in the one design class DF95. And they only cost $400 or $500 compared to $60,000, $70,000, $80,000 for a new Moth.
Yeah. Oh.
My goodness, that was a bit of a shock to
Oh, it
hear
was.
how expensive. Great guest and show. Thanks to all. Back to the fog, Alan Long is saying. Those of you in the northeast and the central part of this, and the north central part of the country, you're having some rough weather, but it's February. Deal with it, right, Julia?
Right.
Okay, see you all later. Hope that you have a great rest of your week, and we'll see you on Friday. Ciao for now.